want to read about rich people anymore. Like, I'm over it. Gone. Be gone. Cathartic. Trying not to have a premature death. This is cinema. Hi, welcome back to my channel. I'm Lena, and today we're doing a review of my 2024, a 2024 wrapped, if you will. I want to do kind of a year in review in terms of books, movies, TV shows, media in general, and just kind of life. I was inspired for the format by Katherout's Revelatorium podcast because I didn't want to do just like a top of my year, and I wanted to talk about all of the big learnings and talk about how my taste is shifting and how it's still transforming to this day. So I compiled a list of a few revelations of the year. I want to know kind of what were your revelations this year, like what are kind of your ins and outs, your big learnings of the year. Did you achieve something that you were like extremely proud of? Let's get into it. This year's first revelation was documentaries. I used to be such a documentary hater, but this past few months, so many things in my life have kind of like conspired to make me into a documentary lover. Like, I interned at a distribution company that mostly did documentaries, so obviously I had to get more familiar with the genre, and I watched at the Berlin Film Festival an insane like 3-hour and 36-minute documentary called Direct Action about like a commune in the west of France that succeeded in stopping the implementation of an airport. And that was kind of an insane experience that changed my outlook on what documentaries could be and could do. And now I'm in this film production program, and I'm learning so much about the making of a documentary and like how complicated it is to go from an idea to finding financing to shooting to editing. And I'm making a documentary short for one of my classes, so it's like I'm really in the deep end of documentary filmmaking, and it's just given me so much respect for the people who make them, and just in general a better grasp of the breadth of documentaries that exist. Like, there are animated documentaries and like comedic documentaries and documentaries that are a lot more intimate and about like familial life. And just like, I finally realized that a documentary doesn't have to be a true crime documentary with cringy reenactments and talking heads and weird B-roll footage. It can be really deep and impactful and not exploitative. My second revelation is that I am no longer afraid of theater kids. It feels like a crazy thing to say. Also because I'm literally putting my face online, I feel like there's an assumption that when you're doing videos on YouTube, you're some kind of like show man or like show person, that you're really at ease with performance. But no, I used to be so scared of theater kids because deep down I'm more of an introverted, kind of bookish, bookworm, rat nerd person. And I guess I was just really like envious, and I felt like I didn't fit in with that kind of crowd, like having that kind of ease and not just shitting yourself every time you have to speak in public. But this year I really had the opportunity to meet with some comedians and actors and like hang out with them and just like work on projects with them, and it was so normal. They were mostly normal, a little bit high strung sometimes, but comes with the territory. And like, I'm generally so in awe of what they can do and their talent, and I feel like instead of being scared of them and like avoiding them, I can learn so much from their craft and go over my fear and just like connect with them on a certain level. Like, I signed up for this free theater workshop, and I'm really excited to like dive deeper in like performing and being in the public eye. Okay, my next revelation is that I think I'm not as into litfic as I used to be. It really hit when I read Ninth House and had so much fun reading about like magic and fantasy, and like I was like, shit, I miss genre fiction so much. I've been devoting to reading literary fiction for some reason, but I want to read more sci-fi, more fantasy, and more romance. And just, don't get me wrong, I still love literary fiction, like intermezzo. I devoured it. I mean, I'll talk about it later, but I still love reading about people's messy inner lives. But I feel like the genre, and it's not even really a genre, but like the types of literary fiction that are hyped and that are very popular online in my circles are getting a bit trite. Like when I read Cleopatra and Frankenstein, it's so boring. Like, okay, we get it, you're hot and you're rich and you're like an artist who is so tortured, but thank God you can always evade the consequences of your actions. Even with books like rom-com that I have already ranted about, I feel like the litfic category is like full of people who are actually scared of genre and who half-ass the books that they're writing about because they actually should be writing genre, but they're scared of it and they're scared of the implications and the lack of status that comes with writing in a genre. Like when you half-ass romance or you half-ass horror or you half-ass historical fiction, and it's like it doesn't feel whole, it doesn't feel like a whole story is being told. I feel like they're just afraid of like slumming it in genre, and so they do like elevated horror or like elevated romance, and I hate it. I just hate it. And honestly, I have the same problem with movies. Like, come on, come play in the mud of genre with us. It's so much more fun. And my last revelation is about the importance of being a local. Do you guys remember when local was like an insult on Twitter? X, formerly known as Twitter. Like basically you were on Stan Twitter and the people who were like outside of Stan wars and Star clans were locals. Basically random average Twitter users who were very often the casualties of Stan Wars. And yeah, so it has kind of a negative connotation for me, but I've decided to reclaim it because I've realized a few things. I was working in the movie theater for a while and I loved having regulars, like the old people who come at the 6 p.m. cult movie screening, and I loved being a regular and going to the same ice cream place every Saturday with my friends, making small talk with the ice cream people, and just like being off a place. And it really hit me when the snap elections were called last summer and that I ended up doing door-to-door canvassing. At the last election, the centrist coalition won the elections in my county by 4 votes. But this year, we managed to flip the county to the left-wing coalition. And like, it was so good to feel like my hometown and the place I was from was not something that would always be in my past or that I would have to resent, but I was something and a place that I could actually mold to my ideals and who I am. And like, it feels like for so long I grew up in like rather like privileged middle class suburb, and I never had bad feelings about my hometown, but it always felt like something that would be in my past forever. Like it didn't feel like I could actually build a life here. But that doing that election and doing canvassing and meeting the people here and realizing that we actually have so much in common and we want the same things really made me want to not see my stay here as temporary and something that I'm trying to escape, but really like revel in being of that place. Yeah, I think it's especially important when we see what can happen with climate catastrophes. I mean, France has been the site of so many devastating floodings and storms that have done incredible damage, and like community is everything. So yeah, that was really important to me, and that was my last revelation of the year. So now I'm going to move on to the favorites of the year. So I wanted to start by doing a musical top 3. It's not a top 3 of my favorite songs as much as it is a top 3 of my favorite musical moments of the year. The first one I want to talk about is just Chapel Roan, her existence as a whole. I loved her album. I had so much fun. Naked in Manhattan was my top song of the year, partly because I kept putting it on repeat for that white line when she talks about Mulholland Drive. And like, I love her. I love her stage presence. I love like how she does not give a shit about becoming like a pop star, and she's not gonna let herself be ground to a pulp by the industry, and I respect that so much. And just I love her, like everything, her artistic direction, like the choices that she makes, and the music is fucking good, and it's a huge moment. And I love having an out like lesbian pop artist that makes music about women, and it's fucking good, and it's dancing music, and it's not all sad or all happy and like asepticized. It's like actual real to queer women's experiences. And big year for Chapel Roan, and honestly one of my top 3 musical moments of the year. The second one I want to talk about is Girls So Confusing by Charlie XCX and Lorde. That was such a huge moment for me. I love Lorde. Pure Heroine and Melodrama are some of my favorite albums of all time and some of the most formative albums of all time. And it was so good to have her on a pop song again. And I think her verse is so like emotional to me. Like I'm getting teary-eyed just thinking about it. Like the first time I listened to Girls So Confusing was on my way to work, and I cried walking to work listening to Girls So Confusing during the Lorde verse, like when it's just like what it's like to grow up as a child who has her own sense of self and identity, but still feeling like you're not fully at home or at your place, and like dealing with the judgments of others, and just wanting to foster this relationship with other women, but feeling like you're not enough or not fitting in with what you think they want you to be. And like, yeah, really, really, really good song and one of my top songs of the year. So, and just also I loved the pop culture moment that it was, the fact that it was a kind of beef, but that was hashed out like in public, in semi-public in a way, in musical form, and that there were so many TikToks like taking the songs and people applying it to their own relationships, and it was really a moment of like art and life like crashing together, and I loved it. My third favorite musical moment of the year was seeing LCD Sound System live. Oh my god, you guys, no one knows how big a fan of LCD Sound System I am, and no one expects it for some reason, but like in 2020, I was in the top 0.05% of their listeners on Spotify. Like, you guys, I'm a huge fan of LCD Sound System, and I finally got to see them live. Mind you, this had been on my vision board, like, and I got to see them at this festival in August, and it was so good. Like, the way that they recreate electronic music and they play electronic instruments on stage, and like I really got to dance to some of my favorite songs of all time and some of my wishlist songs, like, oh my god. And it was just so emotional. I was so close to the stage, and when I was waiting for them to arrive, I made friends with a Romanian guy who was also an LCD Sound System like fan and a cinephile at the same time, and like just it was a crazy day because I was actually not supposed to see them. I had gotten tickets, but I was supposed to work that Sunday, and I had tried to exchange with some coworkers so that I could take on my shift. But that same day, there was a huge electrical like problem at work that made it so we couldn't open. And so I got to see them. Like, absolutely crazy. I was trying to resell my seats at the last moment, and I got to see them because of it sounds like witchcraft, but so many crazy things have happened to me this year. Like, this year, I got my phone stolen and then given back to me. Like, I don't know. I'm the luckiest bitch on earth, honestly. I want to talk about my top 3 books of the year. Two are like a duology, are part of the same series. So these are Ninth House and Hellbent. I've already talked about them in my back to school reading list video, but I really reconnected with genre and with fantasy, and I love, honestly, Leigh Bardugo really has me in a grip like this. Like, I love Ninth House and Hellbent. I love an urban fantasy setting. I love a morally gray like main character. I love the mentor-mentee ambiguous relationship, the constant edging. Yeah, it's so good. And also the subtle discussions of like class and the criticism of academia. Leigh Bardugo knows how to weave in a story. Like, Oh, so good. Then the second book I want to talk about is Sally Rooney. She's on my top 3 for 2 years in a row now. Bit worrying for someone who hated normal people, but intermezzo, so good. I got a signed edition because I don't even like hardbacks. I think I'm gonna buy it as a paperback again, but yeah, because it's not really comfortable to read. But yeah, intermezzo, so good. I have a reading vlog coming out. I love that book so much. I think Sally Rooney is like, to me, like she's so good at getting to the everyday problem of people and just what can I say about Sally Rooney that you don't already know? Like I feel like she's so smart, she's funny, she has these characters that are going through grief, and I love how on top of her usual tackling of like romantic relationships, she confronts these two brothers and she really tackles the idea of the family and the family unit and the differences and that can be there in family. Like honestly, I was crying for like half of the book, and I think she really nails the inner monologue and stream of consciousness of these characters who are both struggling to see how they fit into the world but coping with it in different ways. To me, it's kind of like two shades of neurodivergence where like one is masking to the extreme in trying to fit into the norm to an absurd degree, to his detriment, like to the risk of burnout, and one has completely given up on fitting into normality or like as it is prescribed by society. And I think that it's so obvious that these two characters would butt heads but still love each other. And yeah, I love that book so much. And the final of the 3 books I want to talk about is a French non-fiction essay called Sortir de notre impuissance politique, which translates to exiting our political powerlessness. It was kind of the kick in the ass that I needed. It came after I actually started like being more active politically, doing door-to-door canvassing and stuff. But I think it was one of those books that made me realize that the way that I had conceived of political action were really limited, and that basically for the last 20 years, historical modes of protesting institutional power have failed at getting results, and that we have to invent a new way of fighting for our goals. I think there's a lot of mythologizing and mystifying online of like the French like rioting and the French like burning down stuff whenever they're unhappy about stuff, but even if we still do that, it doesn't always get results. I always felt conflicted because I think there's a really high personal cost to being involved in liberation movements, and that personal cost isn't always justified by results. And I was a bit like hard on myself for not being comfortable with paying that cost because I saw myself as both privileged on like a class level, but also I'm a Black woman, and so I don't want to go throw rocks at cops because I don't want to face like police brutality. I always felt conflicted with that, but now I've realized that there are so many ways that I can be politically active, that it doesn't have to involve putting my bodily safety at risk, and that it doesn't mean that it's less valuable than those who do, and that there are different modes of action that can be mobilized at once to try to achieve our goals. And I think this makes me a lot more pragmatic and less idealistic about how to act politically. I want to talk about my top 3 movies. I think that one thing that's common about all the movies I love this year is that the theatrical experience was exceptional. It really is a year of movies that are made for the theater, that are made to be seen with a crowd on a big screen with big sound. The first one I want to talk about, Love Lies Bleeding. So unapologetically queer, so thriller and violent. It's about this gym manager who falls in love with a female bodybuilder, and the gym manager has a dad who is a crook, and they basically get entangled in his very shady dealings. It's very bloody, it's very crazy. It's about basically love at first sight and being crazy in love. It's the lesbian Bonnie and Clyde, kind of. Like, yeah, I would say that it's the lesbian Bonnie and Clyde, and it's so much fun. When I saw it in Berlin. 2 old people left the theater like at some point because Kristen Stewart, who plays the gym manager, gives a shot of steroids in between the toes of her girlfriend, and then she sucks her toes, and like these two old people were like, no, that's too much for me. And I was like, this is cinema. This is cinema, you guys. I think that won't surprise you when I tell you that the second movie I want to talk about is The Substance. You know me, I love body horror. I love weird shit. I love when there's practical effects. This movie is so much fun. It is not subtle. It is loud. It's overwhelming. It's cathartic. Basically, it's about this actress turned online gym instructor who turns 50 and is told by the company employing her that she is no longer needed. And so she comes across this substance that helps her, that promises to give her back her youth. But what it does is basically separate her into two bodies, one that is her like regular 50-year-old body, and one that is the body of a much younger woman who is very perfect and hot and like the ideal of patriarchal society. And so Demi Moore plays the 50-year-old actress, and Margaret Qualley and a bunch of prosthetics play her younger version. The substance, they're supposed to alternate 7 days Demi Moore, 7 days Margaret Qualley, but of course the balance isn't respected and it leads to really unexpected and bloody consequences. And it's so good. Like, yes, it is saying very obvious things about aging in the public eye, aging in Hollywood, and just like the position of women in society and what they can get from their like physical appearance. But it's also a really fucking good time. I'm also allowing myself to be a little bit patriotic about it because it was directed by a French woman and it was made in France. Like, the practical effects, almost everything was shot in the south of France. And like, I'm like so happy that we have the kind of craft that can make waves worldwide. So yeah. Final movie I want to talk about, to no one's surprise, is Challengers. And the person, of course, who was talking about like shitty bi people making a comeback in fiction would love the tennis threesome movie. Like, who is surprised? Of course, Zendaya, Josh O'Connor, Mike Feist. I mean, you guys know what it's about. It's so good. The music is so good. Honestly, the soundtrack was in my Spotify top. So I don't know what to tell you guys. It's just been a good year. And to me, this is what movies are supposed to do. Like, when I left Challengers, I was so excited. Like, my whole body was like full of so much energy. It was a good fucking time. I feel like I've watched so many good movies this year and I made a top on letterboxd. But like, yeah, the theatrical experience, you guys. Go to the movies. I don't know what to tell you. But if you don't want to go to the movies, I do have some really good TV shows to recommend you. Two that are older, because I decided to like watch old HBO classics or like HBO shows from the time of peak TV, the golden age of TV, if you will. So I started kind of backwards by starting in the mid-2010s. I watched Girls, the Lena Dunham show. So funny, so outrageous, feels so real in a lot of ways. And you know, sometimes you're like, there's a public figure who is so mired with scandals that you forget that what they make like professionally is like really good. And like, even if, oh, she may be a nepo baby and stuff, but like, she is so good at portraying a specific kind of privileged and entitled but marginally talented people. She's so good at this. It's so funny. It's so ridiculous. I loved it. I also loved Sex and the City. I identify very strongly with Miranda, so I'm a bit upset at her ending, but not so much. But like, I feel like Sex and the City started out as such a subversive show, but that it became a bit more socially conservative as it went on. Like, the fact that at the end, all of the girls are paired off and like off to make a family or whatever. Like, I don't know how I feel about that. But I think one thing that I love about Sex and the City is the set design, the fashion. They put the money, you know, like there are always extras in the background. They're always like carefully blocking the shots, like the camera movements, and it's so subtle, but there's so much detail work in it. And I think that's something that I noticed in Girls, is that these shows may not look like your idea of cinematic, but they look good. I think that 30-minute shows no longer look this good. Sex and the City filmed on analog cameras. Oof, the grain in the first season. And I love the fashion, I love the look of it, and just how distinct. I don't know, I feel like we don't get this anymore. Like when you get an ensemble cast, you don't have such distinctive personalities, both in terms of space and in terms of style. And it's all a bit more muddy. And this is really good, you guys. Like, this is why they were calling it the golden age of TV, you know? And then I want to talk about 2 French TV shows. The first one, DJ Mehdi, Made in France. It's a TV show about a DJ and music producer who produced some of the earlier successes of French hip-hop, and then went on to be an electronic music producer and DJ, and was really close to the French touch and the indie sleaze era. Like, he was basically one of the founding members of the Headbanger Records, and he died tragically in his 30s. The TV show, it's 6 episodes of like 1 hour about. I think if you live in Europe, you might be able to catch it on YouTube, and it's so good. If you like music, if you like hip-hop music and the work of sampling and the work of producing a hip-hop song and have the beats serve the lyrics, for me, I feel like I'm like a double culture kid kind of, because I grew up with hip-hop music and R&B and very much black styles, and then I have incorporated into my taste more electronic music, and I always feel like I couldn't kind of bridge these 2 worlds, and finding a person who successfully bridged those worlds but also was a pioneer in both and was a trendsetter and an incredible musician. Like, you guys, I'm gonna start DJing this year. I'm gonna do that. It's so good, and I leave a link below if you want to watch it. Everything I've talked about will be linked below. And then the last TV show I want to talk about is another French TV show, really Arte this year, which is like a public service channel between France and Germany. They have been putting out bangers on bangers. So this one is Samuel. It's a very short TV show about a 10-year-old who is in 2006 and goes from primary school to his first year in middle school. And we follow him as he navigates having a crush and just growing up as a kid in the Paris suburbs in the 2010s. And I love it so much. But I've watched it twice, not in a row, but like basically in a row. The amount of nostalgia and just, yeah, I just loved it so much. I was 8 years old in 2006, and so to me, I recognize so many cultural touchstones of that moment, and I recognize myself in him, in how I was as a child, and it's just so beautiful. And the creator of the TV show, it's an animated TV show. It's very minimalistic in style, but it's so expressive. And the creator of the TV show is Émilie Tronche, and she wrote, directed, and made the voices for every single character in the show. Like, she's so good at this. Yeah, that's it for my tops. That's a lot, I feel. Now, in the style of Revelatorium, I want to talk about what I'm taking into 2025 and what I will be leaving into 2024. So for what I'm taking, I want to take biking everywhere. I bought a bike this year, and when I was living in Paris in the summer, I was biking on those Velib electric bikes all the time, and I love it so much. Even now that it's cold, like this morning it was -5 degrees Celsius, because we don't do Fahrenheit here. It was -5 degrees. I was biking to the train station. Like, I love biking so much. It gives me so much more freedom. I can sleep more in the morning when I have to go somewhere someday. And it's just good for the environment as well. So I love biking. I want to keep doing it. I want to get better cardio. Yeah, for sure. The one thing that I want to be taking into the new year is movie musicals. I didn't have any musicals in my top, but this year has definitely been the year of the musical revival, and I've always loved musicals. Like, you know me, High School Musical 2, one of the best works of the 21st century. I just think that it's time. It's time to stop having people who are like, I don't understand why they're singing. They're singing because it's a movie musical. Like, just suspend your disbelief for 2 hours is 15 minutes. Why can't you enjoy the incredible craft that went into songwriting and a choreography and all of it fitting into the storyline? Like, yes, I am for movie musicals. We had some good ones this year. Even if I was a wicked skeptic, In the beginning, I really enjoyed it, and I've enjoyed like the French musicals that came out. I mean, Emilia Perez is a whole thing. I don't want to get into it, but... And also in terms of movies, I want to take horny filmmaking. I feel like 2 of the 3 movies that were in my top were very horny movies, and I want more of that. I'm not afraid to say it. I am tired of the discourse that we don't need sex scenes. We don't need them, but like, do we need movies at all? Do we need anything besides a roof to live under and food and like some clothes when it's cold? Like, no. So yeah, I am for horny filmmaking. I am taking in 2025 going to the tailor. I love going to the tailor. First of all, because it makes me feel like I'm a rich person. I barely make minimum wage, but like, I love going to the tailor. It's so much fun. It gives me the feeling, and it feels like such a virtuous, it's like, I feel cool, and also I feel like a good person because I took those pants from the thrift store, it cost me €3, and now they're not going to the landfill, and I paid like €10 to have them fit exactly to my body, and now I have a unique pair of pants that fits me perfectly. Like, mind blown, I love it. And what I am taking into the new year is being a hater. I think it's healthy to hate some things, and I think when you love some things, to defend them, you have to hate on some of the things. And I think that was, for me, that was the spirit of my rant review, and I want to not be afraid of having negative opinions because we have to build stuff, and I think criticism is very much needed. So in 2025, I will be a hater, but to be a lover. What am I leaving in 2024? I am leaving reading too many books at once. At one point, I was reading 7 books at once, and it's not working. I'm not actually reading any of them. I think it's better for my mental headspace when I'm over a book midway through to just DNF it and maybe come back to it when I'm ready to read it in full, in one go. Because, you think it's cute to have 7 books on your currently reading. It is not. It's not cute. It's not healthy. One thing that I definitely want to live in 2024 is toothless, eat the rich media. Because how can you eat the rich if you don't have teeth? And I feel like so much eat the rich media, whether it be books or movies that are supposed to be criticizing like the wealthy elite, is not actually criticizing. It is just gawking and reveling in their awfulness. And it's just like, I think it's doing the opposite of mobilizing us to fight to have a better life. It's actually making us complacent in it, and I don't want that. And I'm tired of watching movies and reading books about rich people who are awful. Like, I want to read books about poor people who are also awful, but not because they're poor, but just because everyone is awful, and it's more fun that way. I don't want to read about rich people anymore. Like, I'm over it. Gone. Be gone. Personally, for me, I'm living social drinking in 2024. I stopped drinking like a few weeks ago, and I'm better for it. And I was definitely using alcohol as a crutch in some situations, and I don't like the loss of control, and I don't like what it does to my digestive system, so I'm not gonna drink anymore. And in general, I wanna leave in 2024 my unhealthy and sedentary lifestyle. I'm not trying to glow up as much as I'm trying not to have a premature death. I don't want to rot in my armchair every weekend, I want to go out. Like, it's all going together with like biking places and stuff. I want to go out. I want to do the health appointments that I need to do when I need to do them. I want to go sports. I want to go dancing. I want to go on a hike. No, maybe I don't want to go on a hike. But, I'm just trying to be more active in life and not be a complete couch potato all the time. I still love being a couch potato because that's just who I am as a person, and I love watching movies and TV shows. I need to be in the couch for a lot of those, but I want to be more active and just have fun outdoors. I want to touch grass. So that's a wrap for my 2024 Wrapped. I hope you had a good time. Let me know in the comments below what are some of the things you want to leave in 2024 and what are some of the things you want to take into 2025. And yeah, I'll see you in the next one. Bye!